Hello, and welcome back to our study of A Course in Miracles. I'm Danny Spendlove, and today we are in Chapter 5, Section 2, titled The Guide to Salvation, which sounds kind of important. Paragraph 1, and this first sentence is, I think, powerful, so pay attention. The way to recognize your brother is by recognizing the Holy Spirit in him. I have already said that the Holy Spirit is the bridge for the transfer of perception to knowledge, so we can use the terms as if they were related because in his mind they are. And I think this is referring, I believe it was in chapter 5, section 1, where it talked about how the Holy Spirit can see past perception to knowledge. And remember, we can get to true perception, which is almost knowledge. It's like that last step until we get to knowledge. And so this is saying we can use the terms perception and knowledge as if they were related because in his mind they are. In the Holy Spirit's mind, those terms are related because we can use perception, improve our perception to get to true perception, which then the next little step, there's just a little gap and then it's knowledge. This relationship must be in his mind because unless it were, the separation between the two ways of thinking, so perception and knowledge, would not be open to healing. The Holy Spirit has to recognize their relatedness, how perception is related to knowledge. Otherwise, the Holy Spirit wouldn't be able to help us heal our perception and get it to knowledge. He is part of the Holy Trinity because his mind is partly yours and also partly God's, which is an interesting thought. This needs clarification, not in statement, but in experience. Paragraph 2. The Holy Spirit is the idea of healing. Being thought, the idea gains as it is shared. So this is also in chapter 5, section 1, where it talks about ideas actually grow as you share them. They don't diminish. So if the Holy Spirit is the idea of healing, being thought, the idea gains as it is shared. Being the call for God, it is also the idea of God. Since you are part of God, it is also the idea of yourself. Okay. So the Holy Spirit is the call for God, which is also the idea of God. So the Holy Spirit is the idea of God. Since you are a part of God, it is also the idea of yourself, your true self, right? That self that God created whole and perfect and complete. So the Holy Spirit is also the idea of you as a part of God. So let me start that line over. Since you are a part of God, it is also the idea of yourself, as well as of all his creations. The idea of the Holy Spirit shares the property of other ideas because it follows the laws of the universe of which it is part. It is strengthened by being given away. It increases in you as you give it to your brother. Your brother does not have to be aware of the Holy Spirit in himself or in you for this miracle to occur. He may have dissociated the call for God just as you have. This dissociation is healed in both of you as you become aware of the call for God in him and thus acknowledge its being. So this call for God is an idea, so it is strengthened as it is shared. And so when you share it with a brother, even if that brother is not aware of the Holy Spirit in himself, when you share the idea, you heal that dissociation because we've dissociated from our higher mind, which is where, the Holy Spirit is a part of that higher mind. So even though you've dissociated from that higher mind, when you acknowledge the Holy Spirit in others, you heal it in both them and yourself. Heal that dissociation. Start to bring your mind a little bit closer to being whole again. Paragraph 3. There are two diametrically opposed ways of seeing your brother. They must both be in your mind because you are the perceiver. They must also be in his because you are perceiving him. See him through the Holy Spirit in his mind, and you will recognize him in yours. And him is capitalized. So it's saying, see him, see your brother through the Holy Spirit in his mind, and you will recognize the Holy Spirit in yours. What you acknowledge in your brother, you are acknowledging in yourself. And what you share, you strengthen. So think a minute about what you acknowledge in your brother, you're also acknowledging in yourself. So hopefully you're acknowledging the Holy Spirit, right? But on the other hand, you can also be acknowledging all of their evil, all of their, their sins and their unworthiness and, all those judgmental things, which I think is why judging is something we shouldn't be doing. And it has talked about that in a previous chapter. Because whatever we acknowledge in our brothers, we're acknowledging in ourselves. And whatever we're sharing, we're strengthening. So the more we share the bad things we think we see in others, the more we're strengthening that in ourselves, not just in them. So let's be careful what we're acknowledging in other people. Paragraph 4. The voice of the Holy Spirit is weak in you. That is why you must share it. It must be increased in strength before you can hear it. It is impossible to hear it in yourself while it is so weak in your mind. It is not weak in itself, but it is limited by your unwillingness to hear it. This is the voice of the Holy Spirit. Okay, this part is one of my favorite parts. If you make the mistake of looking for the Holy Spirit in yourself alone, your thoughts will frighten you because by adopting the ego's viewpoint, you are undertaking an ego-alien journey with the ego as guide. This is bound to produce fear. So, to dissect this one a little bit. So this is saying, if you're looking for the Holy Spirit in yourself alone, you are not trying to see it in your brother. You're just trying to look for it in yourself. I think of this as maybe a little bit holier than thou, right? And that may not be our intention, but maybe we just see a lot of wickedness in the world. We see a lot of people doing a lot of really unloving things. And so we're not seeing the Holy Spirit in them, but we're trying to find the Holy Spirit in ourselves. When we do that alone, without trying to connect with our brothers, and it's going to go into this later, so I'm not going to explain this a lot right now, but when we try and do it alone without trying to connect with our brothers and the sonship, like all of God's creations, we're just trying to do our own little separate journey. Separate sounds very ego, right? Then we take the ego as our guide on this journey. But if you recall in the previous section, so chapter 5, section 2, paragraph 3, in paragraph 2, it says, the Holy Spirit is the spirit of joy. He is the call to return with which God blessed the minds of his separated sons. Then in paragraph 3, it says, when the ego was made, God placed in the mind the call to joy. So again, the Holy Spirit is the call to return or the call to joy. This call is so strong that the ego always dissolves at its sound. The ego always dissolves at its sound. So it basically ceases to exist. So if you are taking the ego as your guide to try and find the Holy Spirit, which is this call to joy, the call to return, this is bound to produce fear. Because do you really think your ego, like imagine asking a guide to, take you from point A to point B, and you tell that guide, oh, by the way, when we get to point B, you will die. Like, it's just what happens at point B. All the guides die or whatever, right? Do you really think that guide is going to try to get you to that point B? Or is that guide maybe going to try and dissuade you or try and get you lost along the way or, things like that? And so that's basically what this is saying. By adopting the ego's viewpoint, you are undertaking an ego-alien journey. So this is a journey completely alien to the ego, with the ego as guide. This is bound to produce fear. Okay, paragraph 5. Delay is of the ego. Surprise. Because time is its concept. Both time and delay are meaningless in eternity. I have said before that the Holy Spirit is God's answer to the ego. Everything of which the Holy Spirit reminds you is in direct opposition to the ego's notions. So, again, another reason why it's bad to take the ego as your guide to try and get to the Holy Spirit, because everything of which the Holy Spirit reminds you is in direct opposition to the ego's notions, because true and false perceptions are themselves opposed. The Holy Spirit has the task of undoing what the ego has made. He undoes it at the same level on which the ego operates, or the mind would be unable to understand the change. Paragraph 6. I have repeatedly emphasized that one level of the mind is not understandable to the other. So it is with the ego and the Holy Spirit, with time and eternity. One can't understand the other, like they're completely alien to each other. Eternity is an idea of God, so the Holy Spirit understands it perfectly. Time is a belief of the ego, so the lower mind, which is the ego's domain, accepts it without question. The only aspect of time that is eternal is now. The only aspect of time that is eternal is now. And this makes so much sense to me because I have a journaling practice where I write down what my angels tell me. And I can't tell you how many times when I am distressed about something, my angels tell me, stay present, stay grounded, stay present, stay grounded. And this makes so much sense that if the present or the now is the only part of time that actually, like where time intersects eternity, then doesn't that make sense that to really connect to our spirit, our higher mind, and kind of get out of the ego rat race, we need to be in the now. We need to be in the present. So kind of that Eastern philosophy, right, with meditation and those kinds of things, I think can be really powerful for helping us to get a little more in tune with the now and stop ruminating in the past, stop worrying about the future, just be in the now. And that's where we probably can hear the voice for God a little bit stronger, or a lot stronger. Paragraph 7. The Holy Spirit is the mediator between the interpretations of the ego and the knowledge of the Spirit. So again, ego and spirit cannot communicate, but the Holy Spirit is the mediator between the two, because the Holy Spirit can understand both. The Holy Spirit sees perceptions and also sees the knowledge beyond the perceptions. But spirit can only see knowledge, and ego can only see perceptions. So the Holy Spirit is the mediator between the two. His ability to deal with symbols enables him to work with the ego's beliefs in its own language. His ability to look beyond symbols into eternity enables him to understand the laws of God, for which he speaks. He can therefore perform the function of reinterpreting what the ego makes, not by destruction, but by understanding. Understanding is light, and light leads to knowledge. The Holy Spirit is in light because he is in you who are light. The Holy Spirit is in light because he is in you who are light. But you yourself do not know this. It is therefore the task of the Holy Spirit to reinterpret you on behalf of God. So we are in light because God made us, but we don't even realize that we are light. And so one of the tasks of the Holy Spirit is to reinterpret us because we have remade ourselves in whatever image we think we are. And so since the Holy Spirit has to reinterpret what the ego has made, the Holy Spirit also has to reinterpret like how we think of ourselves so that we actually see ourselves as light. Paragraph 8. You cannot understand yourself alone. Again, remember, because then you're taking the ego as your guide. So you cannot understand yourself alone. This is because you have no meaning apart from your rightful place in the sonship, and the rightful place of the sonship is God. So I have no meaning by myself. I only have meaning in the context of all the rest of the creation of God, the entire sonship, the entire kingdom. This is your life, your eternity, and your self, and that's a capital S, self. It is of this that the Holy Spirit reminds you. It is this that the Holy Spirit sees. This vision frightens the ego because it is so calm. Peace is the ego's greatest enemy because, according to its interpretation of reality, war is the guarantee of its survival. So the ego is terrified of peace because the more you are in peace, the closer you are to God and spirit, and more likely to dissolve the ego, right? The more likely you are to hear that call to God, or that call of joy that will eliminate the ego. And so war is the guarantee of its survival. The ego becomes strong in strife. If you believe there is strife, you will react viciously because the idea of danger has entered your mind. The idea itself is an appeal to the ego. The Holy Spirit is as vigilant as the ego to the call of danger, opposing it with his strength just as the ego welcomes it. The Holy Spirit counters this welcome by welcoming peace. Eternity and peace are as closely related as are time and war. Eternity and peace are as closely related as time and war. Paragraph 9. Perception derives meaning from relationships. So this is perception, not knowledge. Perception derives meaning from relationships. Those you accept are the foundations of your beliefs. I think it means the relationships you accept are the foundations of your beliefs. The separation is merely another term for a split mind. The ego is the symbol of separation, just as the Holy Spirit is the symbol of peace. What you perceive in others, you are strengthening in yourself. And I already said that once, right? Like at the beginning of this section. What you acknowledge in your brother, you are acknowledging in yourself, and what you share, you strengthen. So here it's just saying it in another way. What you perceive in others, you are strengthening in yourself. You may let your mind misperceive, but the Holy Spirit lets your mind reinterpret its own misperceptions. So it's okay if we've had a life of misperceiving things. The Holy Spirit allows us to reinterpret those misperceptions, so they don't have to remain. Paragraph 10. The Holy Spirit is the perfect teacher. He uses only what your mind already understands to teach you that you do not understand it. The Holy Spirit is the perfect teacher because he uses only what your mind already understands to teach you that you do not understand it. It made me think of that phrase, the more you know, the more you realize how much you don't know. And that's kind of what this makes me think of. Like, he uses what you do understand to help you realize that you don't actually understand it. So, the Holy Spirit can deal with a reluctant learner without going counter to his mind, because part of it is still for God. So remember, your higher mind is still with God, is still a part of God. So the Holy Spirit can deal with a reluctant learner without going contradictory to his mind, because a part of everyone's mind is still for God. Despite the ego's attempts to conceal this part, it is still much stronger than the ego, although the ego does not recognize it. The Holy Spirit recognizes it perfectly because it is his own dwelling place, the place in the mind where he is at home. You are at home there too, because it is a place of peace, and peace is of God. You who are part of God are not at home except in his peace. If peace is eternal, You are at home only in eternity. I think that line is beautiful. Paragraph 11. The ego made the world as it perceives it, but the Holy Spirit, the reinterpreter of what the ego made, sees the world as a teaching device for bringing you home. The world is a teaching device for bringing you home. The Holy Spirit must perceive time and reinterpret it into timeless. He must work through opposites because he must work with and for a mind that is in opposition. Correct and learn and be open to learning. You have not made truth, but truth can still set you free. Look as the Holy Spirit looks and understand as he understands. His understanding looks back to God in remembrance of me. He is in communion with God always, and he is a part of you. So if the Holy Spirit is in communion with God always, and he's a part of you, doesn't that mean that there's a part of you that is in communion with God always? That's kind of encouraging. He is your guide to salvation. And remember, that's the title of this section, the guide to salvation. So the Holy Spirit is your guide to salvation because he holds the remembrance of things past and to come and brings them to the present, which again, that's the only part of eternity that time has, is the now. So he holds the remembrance of things past and to come and brings them to the present. He holds this gladness gently in your mind, asking only that you increase it in his name by sharing it to increase his joy in you. And that's it for this section. Please comment or share any thoughts that you had, and I will see you next time.